If you've been hearing about a 13-day IRS deadline and wondering what it means for your Social Security lump sum, you're in the right place. Hello and welcome. If you're a senior relying on Social Security or expecting a lump sum payment, today's topic is especially important for you. There's a 13-day IRS deadline making the rounds, and while it may sound stressful, understanding it clearly can help you protect your money, avoid unnecessary delays, and make sure everything you're entitled to arrives safely. In this video, I'll walk you through what this deadline actually means in simple terms, what steps you may need to take, and the common mistakes many seniors make that can cost them time or even benefits. We'll also talk about how to stay alert to scams and confusing notices, because unfortunately, many seniors are targeted during these kinds of time-sensitive situations. Knowing what to look out for can make a real difference in protecting your financial security. So please stay with me till the end. You don't need to be an expert in taxes or paperwork to understand this. And if you find this helpful, please like the video so others can benefit too. Now, before we go deeper into this 13-day IRS deadline that's been getting attention, I want you to really stay with me here, because what I'm about to explain could help you avoid confusion, unnecessary worry, and in some cases, even financial mistakes that people don't realize they're making until it's too late. First of all, let's slow things down a bit and talk like we're sitting together having a calm conversation. If you've come across this idea of a 13-day IRS deadline tied to Social Security lump sums, you might be feeling a mix of emotions right now. Maybe a little concern, maybe confusion, or maybe you're just trying to figure out if this is something that truly applies to you or if it's just another internet rumor that's been spreading around. And that's a really important place to start, because in today's world, especially online, information can move faster than it can be verified. One post, one forwarded message, or one video clip can make something sound urgent or official, even when the reality is much more nuanced. So let's gently unpack this together. When people talk about IRS deadlines in connection with Social Security lump sums, what they're usually referring to are specific filing windows, reporting requirements, or time-sensitive actions related to taxes, benefits adjustments, or corrections. But here's something very important to understand right from the beginning. There is no single universal, 13-day IRS deadline that applies broadly to every senior receiving Social Security or a lump sum payment. That alone should already give you a bit of relief if you were feeling pressured or rushed. Because a lot of the anxiety around this topic comes from the way it's presented, not necessarily from what the actual rules say. Now, you might be wondering, then why are so many people talking about it? That's a fair question, and the answer is actually pretty simple. It often comes down to misinterpretations of specific notices, administrative timelines, or refund and correction windows that apply only in very narrow situations. For example, sometimes when the IRS processes certain adjustments or when Social Security recalculations happen, there are short response windows involved. But those are not blanket rules that apply to everyone, and they are almost always communicated directly through official mail or secure government portals, not vague online warnings. And this is where I want you to be especially careful. Because seniors, in particular, are often targeted by misleading messages that use urgency as a tool. Phrases like "act now," "deadline approaching," or "protect your lump sum immediately" are designed to trigger emotional responses. Not because the information is always accurate, but because urgency makes people act before they fully verify what they're seeing. So let's bring this back to you. If you are receiving Social Security benefits or expecting a lump sum payment, what actually matters is not panic or speed based on random deadlines floating around online, but clarity. Real clarity comes from knowing how these systems actually communicate with you. The IRS does not typically send urgent instructions through social media, random emails, or third-party messages. They communicate through official notices. Social Security Administration communications also come through secure channels, letters, or your My Social Security account. Anything outside of that should immediately raise a question in your mind, not fear, but caution. And I want you to hold on to that distinction, because it's one of the most powerful protections you can have. Now, let's talk about the lump sum part of this, because that's where things often get even more confusing for people. A Social Security lump sum can refer to different situations. Sometimes it's related to delayed retirement credits, sometimes it's back pay after a claim is approved, and sometimes it involves adjustments after reviews or changes in eligibility. Each of these situations has its own processing timeline, and none of them operate under a simple universal countdown like 13 days or else you lose it. What does matter, however, is timing in a broader sense. If the IRS or Social Security Administration needs information from you, or if there is a correction or verification needed, there will be a window of time to respond. But again, that window is clearly communicated in official documentation, not generalized internet warnings. So if you're sitting there thinking, should I be rushing to do something right now? I want to gently say, not unless you have received something official that clearly tells you to act. Now, let's take a step deeper into something that really matters here, and that's protecting your benefits and your peace of mind. Because even if there is no universal 13-day deadline, there are still real situations where seniors do need to stay attentive. For example, if your personal information has changed, if your bank details have been updated, or if there has been a notice about taxes or verification, those are things that should never be ignored. But again, the key is not speed driven by fear, it's attention driven by accuracy. One of the biggest challenges many seniors face is that these systems, IRS processes, Social Security adjustments, tax reporting, can feel overwhelming. The language is often formal, the paperwork can feel dense, and sometimes it's hard to know what actually requires action and what is just informational. And that confusion is exactly what scammers and misleading messages take advantage of. They know that when something sounds urgent and financial, it naturally creates stress. And when people are stressed, they are more likely to click, respond, or act without double-checking. So here's something I really want you to remember as we go through this together. No legitimate government agency is going to ask you to make rushed financial decisions through unclear or unofficial channels. If something truly matters, you will have time to verify it, and you will always have a way to confirm it directly through official resources. Now, let's bring this into your real life for a moment. If you're a senior watching this, you've probably already dealt with enough paperwork, notices, and financial updates over the years to know that things don't usually happen overnight. Even when something is urgent in an official sense, there is a structured process behind it. That's why this idea of a strict 13-day window floating around online doesn't really match how these systems operate in reality. It sounds precise, it sounds official, but when you actually compare it to how IRS and Social Security processes work, it doesn't fit the pattern of real communication. And I don't say that to dismiss your concern. I say it to help you ground it in something stable, something you can actually rely on. Because the truth is, the most important thing you can do right now is not rush, but verify. If you ever receive anything that mentions deadlines, lump sums, adjustments, or urgent tax-related actions, your first step should always be to check the source. Not the message itself, but where it came from. That simple habit can protect you far more than any deadline ever could. And I want to pause here for a moment and speak directly to you, because this part matters beyond just paperwork or rules. Financial stress can weigh heavily, especially in retirement. You've worked hard, you've planned carefully, and the last thing you need is confusion about whether something urgent is happening with your benefits. So my goal here isn't just to give you information, it's to help you feel more steady when you come across messages like this in the future. You deserve that peace of mind. Now, before we continue further, I want to take a quick moment to say this to you personally. If you're finding this explanation helpful so far, it would mean a lot if you could like the video. Not because it changes anything for me, but because it helps more seniors see this kind of clarification instead of getting caught up in misleading urgency. It also tells me that this is the kind of content you want more of: clear, calm, and easy to understand explanations without confusion or pressure. And if you're someone who feels like these topics sometimes get overwhelming, you're not alone in that. A lot of people quietly struggle to understand how Social Security and IRS updates affect them personally. So your support, even just a simple like, actually helps this kind of information reach more people who need it. Now, coming back to the main point. Let's talk about what you should do if you genuinely receive something that looks official but still feels confusing. Because this is where many people either overreact or ignore something they shouldn't. The best approach is always to slow down and separate urgency from accuracy. Ask yourself whether the message is coming from a verified source. Ask yourself whether it's requesting personal action through secure channels or just pushing you toward quick decisions. And most importantly, ask yourself whether you've seen any confirmation of this requirement anywhere else from trusted government sources. Most of the time, when people take that extra moment, they realize that what looked urgent at first is actually either routine, misinterpreted, or not applicable to them at all. And that realization alone can take a huge weight off your shoulders. Because here's the honest truth: your Social Security benefits are not something that disappears because of an internet deadline you didn't hear about. These systems are designed with multiple safeguards, notices, and review processes. They don't operate on hidden timers that only a few people know about. What they do rely on, however, is accurate information and proper communication between you and the agencies involved. So if there's one takeaway I really want you to carry with you, it's this: stay informed, but don't let urgency replace verification. And as we continue in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to recognize misleading claims more easily, what real official notices usually look like, and how you can confidently respond without feeling pressured or overwhelmed. Because you should never feel like you're racing against a deadline you don't fully understand. You deserve clarity. You deserve time. And you deserve to feel in control of your own financial decisions, especially when it comes to something as important as your Social Security benefits. So stick with me, because we're going to break this down even further in a way that keeps everything simple, practical, and most importantly, calm. Now that we've walked through the details together, let's bring everything into a clear, grounded understanding so you can leave this video feeling steady, not stressed. Because when we talk about something like a 13-day IRS deadline connected to Social Security lump sums, it's very easy for the mind to stay in a state of alertness. That's how urgency works. It grabs your attention first, and only later do you start asking, wait, what does this actually mean for me? And that's exactly why we slowed everything down. What we've uncovered here is that a lot of the confusion doesn't come from official IRS or Social Security rules themselves, but from how those rules get repeated, shortened, or sometimes misrepresented as they travel through social media, forwarded messages, or simplified online posts. And when something financial gets simplified too much, something important often gets lost in translation. So let's be very clear and very honest in this moment. There is no universal, blanket rule that says every senior receiving Social Security lump sums must respond within 13 days to the IRS. That idea, as widely shared as it may be in some places, does not reflect how these systems are structured in real life. Instead, what actually exists are specific, situational deadlines. These are tied to individual circumstances, specific notices, or administrative processes. And when those situations do apply to you personally, they are communicated directly to you through official channels. That distinction matters more than anything else in this entire conversation. Because once you understand that, you're no longer reacting to vague urgency. You're responding only to what is actually relevant to your situation. And that shift alone removes a huge amount of unnecessary stress. Now, let's talk about something a bit deeper here, something that goes beyond just rules and deadlines. A lot of seniors today are navigating a world that feels faster and more digital than the one they originally built their financial habits in. Paper statements have turned into online portals. Letters are now mixed with emails. And sometimes official-looking information shows up in places where it doesn't feel fully secure or familiar. That can create a gap between what is real and what feels real. And when that gap shows up, urgency often fills it. That's why messages about deadlines, especially ones tied to money, benefits, or government agencies, can feel so emotionally heavy. They trigger a sense of, I need to act quickly or I might lose something important. But in reality, legitimate systems like the IRS and Social Security Administration are designed to avoid exactly that kind of confusion. They build in structured communication, formal notices, and response windows that are clearly documented when they apply. So if something ever truly requires your action, you will not be left guessing. You will not be relying on rumors. You will receive direct, verifiable communication that you can confirm independently. And I want you to really hold on to that thought. Because the goal here isn't just to explain one specific topic. The goal is to give you a mental filter you can use anytime something like this appears again in the future. Ask yourself, did this come from an official notice addressed to me personally, or did it come from a generalized message circulating online? That one question alone can completely change how you respond. Now, let's also talk about something equally important, peace of mind. Because even when you understand that a deadline may not apply broadly, the emotional impact of seeing something urgent can still linger. That feeling of, what if I missed something, doesn't always disappear immediately just because you logically understand the situation. And that's normal. We're not just dealing with information here. We're dealing with responsibility, with financial security, and with the desire to make sure everything you've earned and built is protected. So if you're still feeling a little uneasy even after hearing this explanation, that doesn't mean you didn't understand it. It just means you care about getting things right. And that's actually a good thing. But instead of letting the concern turn into stress, the healthiest next step is always verification through official channels. Not repeated checking of online posts. Not reacting to fear-based messaging. But calmly confirming through trusted sources if anything ever truly applies to you. And over time, that habit builds something very powerful: confidence. Confidence that you don't have to rush. Confidence that you don't have to panic. Confidence that you can take your time and still stay fully in control of your financial decisions. That's really what this entire conversation has been leading toward. Because at the end of the day, your Social Security benefits, your IRS interactions, and your financial planning should feel structured and predictable, not chaotic or constantly shifting based on viral claims. Now, before we move into the final part of this video, I want to gently remind you of something important. You are not expected to memorize every rule or every update that exists within these systems. That's not realistic for anyone. What matters far more is knowing how to respond when something new appears. And the correct response is almost always the same: pause, verify, and only then act if it is truly required. If you can take that approach with you moving forward, you're already ahead of most of the confusion that circulates online. So with that in mind, let's transition now into the final thoughts, where I want to leave you not just informed, but genuinely reassured about how to move forward from here calmly and confidently. As we come to the end of this discussion, I want to shift the tone just a little bit and speak to you more personally, because this part is not just about information anymore, it's about how you carry that information with you in your day-to-day life. If you've stayed with me this far, you've probably realized that the idea of a strict, universal 13-day IRS deadline tied to Social Security lump sums is not something you need to panic about. And more importantly, you now understand how easily phrases like that can create unnecessary stress when they're taken out of context or shared without full explanation. But knowing something intellectually and feeling calm about it emotionally are two different things. So I don't just want you to leave here with facts. I want you to leave with a sense of stability. Because financial topics, especially ones involving government agencies, can sometimes feel intimidating even when nothing is actually wrong. Just the language alone, deadlines, forms, verification, adjustments, can make things feel heavier than they really are. And over time, that can lead people to either worry too much or avoid looking into things altogether. Neither of those reactions is helpful. What actually helps is a middle ground, staying informed without feeling pressured. And that's exactly what we've been working toward here. Now, I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine you receive a message tomorrow, maybe a letter, maybe something you see online, and it uses urgent language again. It mentions deadlines, or payments, or required action. But this time, instead of feeling immediately stressed, you pause for just a moment. You don't rush. You don't panic. You don't assume. Instead, you ask yourself, is this directly addressed to me through an official source? That small pause changes everything. Because most confusion doesn't come from lack of information. It comes from reacting too quickly before verifying the source. And when you start building that habit, you protect yourself in a way that no single video or article ever could fully do for you. Now, let's also talk about something that often goes unspoken. Many seniors quietly carry a sense of responsibility when it comes to managing their benefits and finances. There's often a feeling of, I need to get this right, or, I don't want to make a mistake that causes problems later. That responsibility is real, and it's valid. But what I want you to understand is that you are not expected to navigate this system perfectly or instantly. These systems are designed with layers of checks, confirmations, and communication steps specifically because they know people need clarity, not pressure. So if something ever truly matters, you will have time. You will have confirmation. And you will have ways to verify it without guessing. That's an important truth to hold on to. Because when urgency is removed, what's left is something much more manageable, simple, structured information that you can respond to at your own pace. Now, I also want to acknowledge something human here. Even after hearing explanations like this, it's normal for a small part of your mind to still occasionally wonder, what if I missed something? That kind of thought doesn't disappear instantly, especially when financial security is involved. But the way you respond to that thought is what makes the difference. Instead of letting it push you into stress or overchecking information repeatedly, you can gently bring yourself back to what you now know, that real deadlines are always communicated clearly, officially, and directly. You don't need to chase them through uncertainty. You just need to recognize them when they are real. And that is a skill that grows stronger every time you apply it. Now, before we wrap up completely, I want to say something directly to you, not as information, but as appreciation. Taking the time to understand topics like this matters. It means you care about your financial well-being, your independence, and your peace of mind. And that mindset itself is one of the strongest protections you can have. You are not just passively receiving information. You are actively choosing to understand it, question it, and make sense of it. And that puts you in a much stronger position than simply reacting to whatever shows up in front of you online. Southwest, as we close out this video, I want to leave you with a very simple thought. You don't need to respond to every urgent-sounding message immediately. You only need to respond to what is confirmed, relevant, and officially communicated to you. Everything else can wait until it is verified. And that kind of patience is not delay, it's protection. Now, if you found this video helpful in giving you more clarity and helping you feel a bit more at ease about this topic, I want to sincerely thank you for staying all the way through. That means a lot, because it shows that you value understanding over confusion, and calm explanation over rushed information. If you haven't already, I would really encourage you to like the video. Not as a formality, but because it genuinely helps this kind of content reach more seniors who might currently be feeling unsure or stressed about the same topic. Sometimes, a calm explanation at the right moment can make a big difference in how someone sees things. And if you'd like, you can also subscribe so you don't miss future videos where we break down Social Security, IRS updates, and other important financial topics in a way that stays simple, clear, and easy to follow, without unnecessary pressure or confusion. Most importantly, though, I just want you to walk away from this feeling a little more confident than when you started. A little more informed. And a little more at ease about how to handle these kinds of claims in the future. Because at the end of the day, that's what really matters here. Not urgency. Not panic. But clarity. And you've got that now.